Will India's protesting farmers force the Prime Minister into a climb down? Narendra Modi is resisting calls to repeal farming reform laws. They fear they'll be left at the mercy of big corporations. What are the political risks for Modi? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Bernard Smith. More than 60% of India's population rely on agriculture for a living. But farmers who've long been a crucial voting bloc often complain of being ignored. And now they're worried they could be exploited by agriculture reforms passed in September. The laws seek to loosen rules around the sale, pricing and storage of farm produce. Farmers fear the new free market system means they'll lose government-backed minimum price guarantees. They've tried to march on the capital, New Delhi, but have been stopped by police using tear gas and batons. Now they're blocking main roads and plan to stay until their demands are met.
We have enough facilities to cook and eat and arrange for our stay. We only want the laws to be rolled back and to go back home happy. If it's not done, then we will continue to protest, be it for 6 months or a year.
We always suspected the government's intention and always will, because the government has become a slave of the corporations. They want to turn us into their slaves as well. Well, we want a government which is elected by the people and talks about the people.
The Indian government says the reforms are necessary to boost production and bring in much-needed private investment. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has tried to assure farmers the laws won't harm their businesses.
I want to tell the citizens and farmers from the banks of the river Ganges and the holy city of Varanasi that we are working with intentions which are pure as the water of the river Ganges and without any purpose of betrayal.
Most of the farmers come from the states of Punjab and Haryana that are known as India's grain baskets. Many have camped out at the Singhu border. Elizabeth Paranam has been to one of the protests near the capital, New Delhi.
Well, despite farm union leaders attending talks with the government, tens of thousands of farmers remain on two key highways, blocking the road into the capital region of Delhi. Now, farm union leaders have told us that they're attending the talks, but they're not hopeful of a breakthrough. And that's because of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's comments that these laws are good for farmers, that they're in the interest of farmers. And farmers say that that's what happened last time in the last round of talks in November, that the government didn't listen, that they wouldn't write guarantees around a minimum price for their produce into law. That is why they're protesting now, and that's why they'll say they'll continue to do so until the government repeals these laws. Meanwhile, the farmers have had some international support, the first international comments about what's happening here from Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who said that Canada will always stand by the right of people to peaceful protest, to protest peacefully. That's perhaps not surprising given Canada has such a large population. More than 500,000 people in Canada are of Punjabi descent. Many of these farmers are from Punjab. Well, those comments weren't well received here in India, with the Ministry of External Affairs calling them ill-informed and saying that Canada shouldn't be making comments about internal affairs, about the internal affairs of a democracy.
The legislation changes the way farmers do business. Currently, farmers are guaranteed a minimum price for their produce at wholesale markets. The new law allows them to sell direct to anyone. Farmers fear big corporations could force prices down. The law also allows private buyers to hoard essential commodities for future sales. And farmers will be able to enter into direct contracts with private companies. Let's bring in our guests. In New Delhi, we have Deepa Sinha, Assistant Professor of Economics at Ambedkar University in Delhi. Joining us from Oxford is Nikita Sood, Associate Professor of Development Studies at Oxford Department of International Development. And Aresh Deshpande is an agriculture policy specialist and the former director at the Institute for Social and Economic Change, and he joins us from Bengaluru. Welcome to you all. Aresh, I'll start with you, if I may. Just give us a quick, brief rundown of what the most significant reforms the new laws will bring about.
I would say that the new laws, there are 3 laws.
Yes.
One goes with the commerce and it's called Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Act. Now this comes under the Constitution's concurrent list 43rd, and there are 6 or 7 points which are covered in this law. Intrastate and interstate trading of produce is free, is allowed, permitted without any kind of cess, duties, etc.
Yes.
Electronic trading is permitted. Traders must trade with a PAN card. PAN card is a personal accounting number. Electronic registration of traders is essential if at all the traders are getting into.
Okay.
Payment not to delay beyond 3 days. No market fees. Price information system should be in place, and dispute resolution is in place. This is the first act. The second act is Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement Act. This is Price Assurance and Farm Services Bill. Farmers and the sponsor may enter. This is a Contract Farming Act.
Okay.
They can enter into agreement
Yes.
with a fixed price, with quality, grade, standards, etc. Then the responsibility of the sponsor is to pick the product at the pre-decided price and pay 2/3 of the amount immediately.
Yes.
Sponsor prohibited from acquiring, this is most important, acquiring ownership, lease or mortgage of the land of the farmer, and this is in the act. Insurance to be provided and elaborate procedure is set.
And the third one?
Then the third one is Essential Commodities Act.
Okay.
This allows the government to regulate the supply of certain food items, and the stock limit may be imposed on agricultural produce only if there is a steep price rise. And there are triggers about the steep price rise. That is 100% in case of perishable, if the price rises more than 100% of double price,
Okay.
or 50% in case of non-perishable.
Okay.
This is basically the 3 acts.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. And Deepa, just why are many farmers so nervous of what are essentially free market reforms of farming in India?
Precisely because of that. So broadly, if you look at these 3 acts, what they do is that they deregulate the agricultural sector in the country. And the states from which the farmers are mainly protesting are those states in which the market regulation is quite effective, where public procurement by the state happens from a large number of farmers, where they get a guaranteed price. And these markets are working fairly efficiently, and they also provide tax revenues to the federal government locally. And so this is something that has come without much discussion, something that should actually falls under the purview of the federal government, not the central government, but the state government. And at a time when it's very difficult for everybody across the country, that suddenly such major things are being done without taking the farmers into confidence, especially at a time when over the last 3 or 4 years, there have been a huge farmer protests across the country, in fact, asking for legislations which would increase the regulation, which would guarantee a minimum price. So this is completely against what the farmers have been demanding for over the last 3-4 years. And it is something that is instilling a fear in farmers that the existing system would change in a way where farmers as individuals would have to deal with large corporates where their bargaining power would obviously be much lower.
Nikita, I read that a quarter of India's farm produce is lost to wastage. Surely that suggests that some sort of reform is needed.
That's absolutely right. And ostensibly, one can, see that this government is trying to respond to a crisis in agriculture. And you have touched on one of the issues of wastage, but there are many others of remuneration, of access to credit. And we could say that, these 3 laws are being brought in to make conditions for farmers better. In fact, that's what the government wants us to believe. However, while we have to admit that there is a crisis in agriculture reflected in, say, suicide figures of farmers, where, just last year in 2019, over 10,000 farmers committed suicide in India. These acts are not necessarily, like your previous speakers have said, are not going to make conditions better for farmers. They're going to liberalize and deregulate markets, whereas what is really needed is for farmers to have better access to credit, better regulation, better prices for inputs, and assured prices for their produce. And these acts do none of that.
RS, there is no major economy in the world that leaves farmers completely at the mercy of free markets quite like this does. The EU, 34.5% of the EU's budget goes on farming and fishing subsidies. US subsidies forecast to be $37.2 billion this year. You're throwing the Indian farmers to the wolves, aren't they, with this legislation?
Right. There are quite a few misunderstandings, not only among the farmers, but also among the academicians. Just now, the other speaker said that the agriculture falls in the state list. Yes, true. That agriculture falls as entry 40 under the state list. That includes agriculture, which means production, agricultural education, protection from pests and diseases, and it is very absolutely clearly written. Whereas, in the union list, under the trade and commerce, interstate trade is listed, and also entry 33, which came in the concurrent list, inserted with the third amendment in 1954. It specifies trade and commerce in foodstuffs, edible oil seeds, cotton, and other crops. Right. Now, the farmers are told, and in fact, a lot of academicians say that agriculture falls in the state list. True, but then it's only for that purpose. Second thing is, as far as farmer suicides are concerned, there is a very clear logical build of farmer suicide, and my book is there by Sage Publications. I'm speaking from a survey which I had taken of 13,000 farmers in 2002.
Yes.
Across 13 states in the country, which is impact of minimum support prices on the farm economy. Now, I had Punjab in it, and Punjab is very happy with the MSP for a simple reason that, like any other government organization, the government functionaries operating in the MSP sector of Punjab are absolutely corrupt. And I am saying it on the camera, for the reason that when the farmer takes 10 quintals of wheat of C grade to the mandi, immediately as soon as it enters the mandi, the grade changes from C to B, some 20-30 rupees difference. From there, from 10 quintals, by the time it is weighed, it becomes 15 quintals. Which means the farmer gets a huge amount from the government. And neither the person who is weighing nor the person who is grading are losing anything. It is the state which is losing. And that's why Punjab farmers are agitating.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Deeper, most Indian farms are very small, 1.1 hectares. And other farmers are even smaller than that. What are the risks to them of these reforms?
So, actually, it is true that if you look at the farmers who are protesting, a large section of them are larger farmers because, like you said, 80% of Indian farmers are what we would call small and marginal. And so they do not benefit from the procurement by the state very much. They don't get the assured prices. However, when the market gets deregulated, then there are many other things also that we lose out if the state-regulated markets do not function anymore. Price signaling, for instance, is one of those, where it kind of sets the floor of the price for various commodities that even the government does not procure, which kind of sets a floor for the price at which the small farmers sell as well. The other issue, which I was saying earlier again, is to do with this whole issue of contract farming and allowing the private sector to trade directly with farmers. What that means is that now you can have big corporate interests directly dealing with farmers without any regulation, without any middle layer, which is ensuring that the farmers' interests are protected. So the farmers, especially because they are so small, their interests can be protected only when they work as a group or where there is some kind of a platform that is voicing their concerns. So that is, in fact, the biggest concern, that these small farmers would be left directly to deal with big companies. And obviously, they would lose leverage then in the market, and prices, they would not get assured prices. And at a time when agriculture is in crisis, there is a problem that inputs are becoming more expensive,
Yes.
but prices are not assured. And even the wastage that you talked about earlier is also to do with the lack of agricultural infrastructure, access to markets, and so on. So I just want to say that I'm not saying that agriculture in India does not need reforms, but the reforms that are needed is in fact more investment and more regulation rather than going in the other direction.
Nikita, how are these small-scale farmers going to be able to deal directly with major businesses? Surely the scales are already weighted against them, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. And that's why they're protesting. I think political actors are being very unfair and not quite getting the pulse of the problem when they say that these are actually empowering acts and the farmers don't understand what's going on. The farmers are the ones who are actually facing the conditions that your previous speakers are talking about. And that is why they're protesting. While we might be seeing larger farmers on the street, we are also seeing organizations of farm labor and smaller farmers who are protesting and trying to get their voice heard. And this is not new. This protest has been on in many parts of North India for well over 2 months. And the government would do well to hear what these farmers are saying instead of trying to ram this legislation down everybody's throats just because they have a brute majority in Parliament.
Nikita, I also wanted to ask you, there are 7,500 of these regulated agricultural markets, mandis, in India. What sort of a role do they play in communities where they are?
Well, so, we have a nationalist government in power, and it's trying to tell us that what they will bring about is one market for one country. But we have to understand the sort of landscape in which these mandis exist, which are basically, farm marketing, produce marketing agencies. It is not true that mandis cover all the farm produce that is available in India. Even today, most states allow people to sell at their farm door rather than taking their produce to a mandi. But like Deepa was saying, the mandis and the minimum support price that is available for some commodities in these mandis have a signal effect for all the other goods that are being sold even at the farm door. And it is this sort of price that will be weakened, and therefore the signal being sent even to those not selling in mandis today will have an adverse effect on farm prices. And that's why big and small farmers are protesting right now.
Okay, and RS, before you address the comments of our colleagues, can I try again to get you to specifically address the issue of farming subsidies? They're essential in Europe, they're essential in the US. If you take them away from Indian farmers, half the population risks its jobs. Is there enough support for these farmers with these new laws?
One thing is that nowhere in the law it has been stated that MSP is going to be closed. No. The second thing is, as far as contract farming is concerned, and I don't know if you are able to see this book.
Okay, so go ahead.
All right. This is on contract farming and tenancy reforms.
Yes.
Its subtitle is Entangled Without Tethers. Now, contract farming came in with the 2003 Model APMC Act. And this Model APMC Act had 3 players. In fact, the third act here on the contract farming makes it compulsory for the contractor to involve government in the contract, and government assures
RS,
through the
please
insurance.
forgive me for interrupting you because we're very, very tight for time. But can I just specifically ask, is there enough to ensure with the new laws that these farmers will be financially compensated? Very quickly, if you can.
See, these laws are not for financial compensation if somebody is thinking of that. No. Financial compensation goes through the MSP. Second thing is that if we believe, and that's what many people believe, that APMC or market yards are properly functioning. No, there are strong cartels, and I had done it on onion. The cartels begin from the APMC till the Azad Mandi, Azadpur Mandi. These cartels decide the prices, and these prices are decided by even the signals in the air. And I have gone into the APMC.
Okay.
There are two instances where firing had taken place on the farmers.
We'll come back to you in a moment. Thank you very much. Deepa, he's talking there about the cartels currently setting the prices. There is some sort of reform needed, isn't there? Is this the way to bring it about?
Absolutely. One is not saying that the APMCs, the way they are currently functioning, are functioning perfectly or that they are very democratic. There are cartels. There are issues of corruption and so on. But the reform then is not to get rid of the APMCs. In fact, there are some states in the country, like a state called Bihar, which did do away with the APMC over about 10 years back. And there you find that the markets are even worse, that the farmers have no access to any markets now because of them not having the mandi. So there is a need for reform. But the reform is not one which does away with any kind of regulation. That would be throwing the baby out with the bathwater. What we need is better regulation and more support also, both from the input as well as the prices side to farmers. Just another point that the middlemen in the APMCs who are villainized often are actually in the absence of access to formal credit to the farmers and are also very important source of credit, are an important source of telling the farmers about what's going on in the market. There is a certain network that has been built. That is not being replaced with a better system. Rather, it's just being completely removed.
Nikita, there's evidence in Europe that big corporations have a significant effect on the pricing of agricultural products. For example, milk is often supplied at less than cost price. Are there protections? Has India learned from there? Are there protections here for that?
Absolutely not, and that is why the farmers are worried. It is true that the current laws do not do away with minimum support price in many commodities, but there is a systematic weakening of the bargaining power of the farmers and a greater place being given to large agricultural corporations. And there are very few safeguards that we are seeing being built into current legislation. These three laws, but others that we can talk about, where the farmers' interests are being put first. That is not the case. It's the corporations that are being pushed forward. And even if you see the federal government using the concurrent list of the Constitution for pushing through this legislation, they are doing that because they are allowed to do that for commercial marketing of food, whereas agriculture is a state subject. So the government, the central government, is seeing this as a matter of agricultural marketing, whereas the farmers are fighting it because they are seeing it as a matter of identity and livelihood and their power. So there is a difference in how this issue is being seen by the central government as commerce and liberalization, and by the farmers as their own identity, livelihood, history, and who they are. So they are talking at completely different levels here.
All right, folks. Unfortunately, time is against us and we're out of time. But thank you to all our guests, to Deepa Sinha, to Nikita Sood, and to Aresh Deshpande. And thank you too for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website aljazeera.com, and for more debate go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. We are at AJ Inside Story and I am at Jazeera Bernard. From me, Bernard Smith, and the whole team here, bye for now.